Well, we only have 19 questions so far. It's been about 2 hours to get through them all. And it's not just answer question one with yes, no, go to two. No, there have been some great discussions that have branched off from them. So without further ado, we might as well start with that first question. First question being, who inspires you? Who are and were your role models?
Oof, good question. I started a long time ago in this, looking back into the mid to honestly like the early 90s. So, there was several where you had like the paper role models, right? So you had the dudes you always read about. In my day, it was a lot of Cooper, right? So you read everything about Gunsight, everything about Jeff Cooper. So that was always a big starting point for me. And then that translated into other reading and other things that kind of inspired and drove that along. For me, it was really the mid 2000s where things really started to pick up heavy with that, finding some mentors, role models. I was working with a really good group of guys out of Michigan for a period of time. It was right around 2004 era, 5 era, when I really kind of latched in that first role model, and that was Pat Rogers. Pat was kind of that father figure that I never had at a point in time in life for this kind of thing. So, I was under Pat's wing for a million years, well over a decade plus. And that led to others, right? That was like, after that was like Louis Auerbach, right? Then it was like, you got to meet and hang out with like Robbie Barkman. You got to meet Clint Smith. You got to meet all these other icons at that time, Jim Cirillo, all these other people that you only read about, right? And guys today go, who are some of these people? Jim Cirillo, never heard of them. Look them up. So there's a lot of that. But I think really one of the first big mainstays, honestly, and the one that stayed with me all those years was Pat. That story has been told a million times, but it was definitely that really kind of sunk it into me of where I needed to take myself, the training, my own training as well, and teaching to kind of those next levels of things, right? And time to, I won't say up the game, but take it a lot more serious.
If I recall correctly, too, when he passed, didn't you wind up taking over some classes for him?
I was actually teaching his courses when he died. Mm-hmm. Like literally, I got the call that morning on the range at like 7:30 that morning.
Yeah. Sitting in that morning,
Boone County, Indiana, eating my oatmeal and eggs and bacon, and it was like, well, here we go. So yeah, it was that was a long ride.
Yeah,
it really was.
What's so cool about the list that you just gave was, really these are the pioneers of where we're at now, and a lot of people, they don't necessarily know who they are, but right now the next generation of those caliber of people who are among us, it's so cool to be able to say, you know what, I know that guy, and we talk about this stuff, and this next generation that gets to glean information from those guys, it's so awesome. One of the positive things about the internet, right there.
It's about the only thing positive on the internet. Most of the points anymore. It's very hard to get, I think, today's or this next generation of shooters, instructors, trainers, however they want to, pose themselves as, they will never understand, right? Like they've, and I've said it once before, they've been given all the shortcuts, right? All the end roads have been handed to them now. The internet is there. The videos are there. All these things are available and just handed to them now. Like you can literally throw a rock at anywhere now and find a good instructor or a relatively decent one that will teach you something or help you along with this. But they don't really get where it came from originally. Like guys are like, oh, I'm doing this new cool thing. And we're like, hold on, let me go find this book for you. I'll be right back. Go reach in the library and pull something out and go, 1978, dude, we were already doing this kind of stuff, right? So then they start with the boomer jokes, right? And I'm like, yeah, but I still carry a 1911 and I'm better with it than you. But they'll never truly understand the history or the lineage of it because they didn't have to live it. It's kind of like us talking to our grandparents or our great-grandparents or whoever in the family about this stuff. Like, you'll never understand what we went through back in whatever, right? And today it's so much easier because like when we did this, it was like you found it in a magazine. You sent off a check, right, or a money order. You waited 6 to 12 weeks. You got a piece of paper back or something back that says, sure, come to gun camp. And then you started saving pennies for the next, 19 months to drive across country, take all your stuff with you, sleep in your vehicle. It was a totally different world then. But honestly, it's kind of good and bad for them, because I would not want to see them go through a lot of the same things I did, right? So it's an easier path of knowledge, information, their ability to get it versus the 4 schools that were available back when I was out and about starting. So it's good and bad, right? Twofold, but they should at least explore the lineage and some of the history of it a little bit deeper.
Yeah, gaining that information without those lessons learned. There's definitely value that's missing. And that's something that I think about quite frequently with a lot of our discussions. Or it's interesting to see on Facebook discussions progress and realize this person has not done this. They're going based off of what they've read, what they've seen on a YouTube channel. Had they actually experienced this themselves, they'd know you can't do that.
Right. That's absolutely true. But it's where we're at today, right? It's just the life of social media.
Yep.
Yeah, that reminds me of the modcast that you did with Ken Good in a lot of different ways. I mean, he talked about how I think that was the modcast where you guys talked about how there's basically nothing new under the sun, even as far as light techniques. It's just like, yeah, people used to be running around with a stick that had fire on the end of it. So, and then I think he also talked about how a lot of people say, oh, well, this technique works and this doesn't. And then he goes, okay, well, have you tried it? And they're, well, no, but I've researched it and I know that it works. So I think you guys were talking about that with strobe effect. I think that's what he was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you again, a technology thing with that was where, hey, great. So we took a technique and turned it into a product to make life once again easier, simpler, circumvent certain things, shortcuts. And that's just how everything progresses, right? It all starts somewhere and then it just keeps progressing with technology. It's funny you mentioned that because I'm getting ready for like a 4-day low light package that I'm about ready to start teaching. So
let me know when you come near Pennsylvania and I'll sign up for it.
I'll be there in like 4 more days. 5 more days. I'll be in Wilkes-Barre area for just a quick 1-day course. And then I do New York and then Connecticut.
Okay.
Hey, Evan, it's your turn. Now you get to take a class.
Is that class already full?
I can always make room for something. I don't even know what course it is right now. I'm showing up with a truck full of guns and I just take out and see what the students on and go, oh, we're teaching something today with pistols. Okay, I'll figure it out as I get there. So,
all right. We'll have to talk about that later.
Yeah.
Figure out. Yeah, I'm like 20 minutes from Wilkes-Barre. So.
Nice. So for you, with all the experience you have, what do you look for in an instructor?
Oof. That's a good one. Their ability to convey information obviously is important, right? For me, and it's not even an ego thing. It's just at this stage in the game, right, where I'm at in my training, my progression of levels of things, I look at their ability to handle problems on the range, right? Or their ability to get information across to students or handle, just the way they present information overall. Because again, there's only so many ways to teach somebody to shoot a head box or a chest box, right? There's only so many ways to play that silly game anymore. It's the ability to convey information, a sense of humor, keeping the class light, but mainstay their ability to get through to a broad spectrum of students. And even like to this day, like my list of instructors that I even remotely want to go to is so small and narrow scoped anymore. It's probably 6 people, right? And it's dudes that I've already taken courses with or that are peers or friends or people that I just like to repeat a particular course because it's a good tune-up for me. but mainly I got to say it's their ability to convey information. And honestly, it's like their honesty in saying, I don't know. If they don't have an answer, don't BS the student through it, right? Like I'll tell guys as well, I'm like, hey, if I don't know, I'll find somebody that does, right? And just email me, after class or in the next day or two. If I don't have that information for your class, get a hold of me, refresh my memory. I will get that info. And if I can't, I'll tell you, hey man, I have nothing for you at this point. I've exhausted all those resources, but I think most of all, their ability to convey information, how they handle certain little things and really deal with those minor difficult things, right? They're small, but they can be very difficult to some instructors. So ultimately it's kind of that, and just an overall sense of humor to keep the class light.
Yeah, it's funny how important sense of humor it really is, and it helps things flow. Quick, almost stand-up like ability is awesome.
It is. You have to kind of know, like, when you can kind of not really insult somebody, but insult them without insulting them, to find something that's just going to get them to loosen up a little bit more, or to just poke a particular button to get them just to kind of like spring out of that shell that they've already put themselves into, being stressed out going to a class, or their first one, or something that's completely outside of their realm or wheelhouse they haven't done before. So it's always like, you can tell right away that person. You look at them and go, oh, that's the target today. Okay, that's going to be the person that we got to kind of poke the bear on a little bit and get out of that shell. So it's always fun.
Yeah, I don't think we've touched on that at all, but I think that's a really good point, is being able to keep people a little more relaxed, I guess, so that they really can open up and actually start thinking about the curriculum and what they're supposed to be learning, instead of just, I have to make sure that I'm, not doing anything stupid, or this maybe it even might be the first time that they've ever gone to a class before and they don't really know what to expect. So yeah, that's a good one. Definitely.
Honestly, I bet I would imagine that's a really hard balance to strike, because it's like the nature of the class, like you're teaching people how to do things with guns in their hands, and safety, of course, is, the number one priority. And depending on what class you're teaching, sometimes you do have day one newbies that you're trying to, manage safety, but at the same time, like you were just saying, bring them out of their shell and hopefully calm their nerves. I can't even imagine how difficult that can be.
It can be extremely difficult, especially when you're dealing with such a diverse group, right, or such a mixed group of skill sets and individuals, and their learning needs versus their wants. And, the way you figure that out is in your opening briefs, right? In the morning briefs, the dissertation that goes on about the class, the overview, little roundtable discussions. And it's like, okay, you need to spend that first good hour at least, just having that talk time with them to relax them, get their brains engaged, get them to kind of wake up and come out of that shell, right? And just to kind of see who's going to be that person, who's still a little edgy. Usually by that point, you get a pretty good grasp of or handle of it. I was used to running lines of students that were 30 plus people at a time, at another place I worked. So it was like, oh boy, I have 30 different personalities and maybe even 35 with some of these people. So here we are, right? And it's just part of the game, and that's the experience part of it, right? That's the stuff you don't get in a USCCA class or an NRA class or a whatever class it is that you're taking for your instructor certifications or whatever it may be. That's the part of that program you don't get. And that's the part that only comes through a lot of experience, and just a lot of experience being on the line at courses, AIing for an instructor, right? Or finding that mentor where you're just taping targets and asking questions, right? Like, what's next? What do you need me to do? Those kind of things, right? That process.
I remember going through, actually pretty much every instructor that I can think of, notable instructor, Pat Rogers, Rich Mason, Blowers, Jedlinski, all kinds of guys. Anytime they spoke, people would stop what they're doing, turn and listen, because we don't know if this is going to be some awesome insight or this is going to be hilarious. And it's going to be worth our time to hear what they have to say.
That is true. That there's always little nuggets, right? There's always little pieces that come out throughout the day. So it's always important to kind of be turned on enough to hear those little things.
Heck yeah. So if I remember correctly, you have chef training, you have law enforcement training, but what inspired you ultimately to become an instructor?
My own seeking out of knowledge and information. It was more of, there's programs being taught, there's things that I'm being instructed on, right? Like literally instruction, right? You will do this, you will do that. Ultimately, it came down to there had to be more than just being instructed to do something, right? Being taught things, being given information, being given knowledge, even little pieces of the puzzle, right? Those little pieces can often be that one that you need to connect the other 4 dots in that equation. And so that was really it. It was like, I needed more, right? I wanted more information. I wanted more knowledge. I wanted to learn more about myself and about what I needed to get through to deliver to people. And that's really where it started ultimately, was probably around 2000, 2001, 2000 era, when I really was like, okay, I need to do more. I need to go to more places. I need to see more things. I need to talk to more people. I needed to divulge and dive into other groups, not just firearms. So I needed to look at like sports performance psychologists. I needed to look at other people that had other traits in performance realm based worlds that were like, hey, this is all interesting to me, because now we're actually learning about people. And it's the gun stuff is easy. It is the most stupidest, easiest thing in the world is the gun stuff, right? The gun stuff is simple, but it's the learning part and getting the information and being able to put the knowledge back out that you have learned. And, one of the other guys that I really did a lot with for years is Dave Harrington. And Dave is on another planet with a certain level of things, and he's just Dave. But one of the things he told me in like 05, probably 05, 06 was teach what you learned, not what you were taught. So, we've talked about the parrots that are out there, right? And there's a ton of them in the industry, but the true people that learn things, right? That's the stuff that should be taught. As she's taking notes about that, you can see that wheel spinning. And Evan's like, yeah, whatever. That doesn't make any sense. I don't care.
I'm just typing all my notes. I've got too many notepads already.
Never enough notepads, dude. Never, trust me. But understanding that, right? And that was a big key, like learning point for me was, oh man, teach what you learned, not what you learned, not what you were taught. And that was one of those things that had such a huge impact on me, as minor as it was, right? It's just a passing thing that me and Dave were talking one night years ago. I mean, God, over a decade plus back. And it was like, that nailed it, right? That put all the pieces together, came together with that one little quip that he put out. That was it.
That is a cool quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of that quote too, just because what you said about parroting. I mean, regurgitating information does not mean that you understand it. It just means that you've memorized something that you read. So yeah. There's a lot of things that I've even just been delving into when I shoot, where, for a while I was that person where I just read things and then I just regurgitated them to other people. But then when you actually start to put it into practice and really actually learn something from it, you gain a much better understanding of what the person is talking about. So for sure.
Only so much parroting of things that you can do, right? Like you can go to any instructor and pull away a whole bunch of stuff and go, that's cool. I'm going to do that drill, or I'm going to do this with this exercise. And then it comes a point when you realize, ooh, this group is completely not ready for this, or whatever it may be. But yeah, that's a very real. So learning, right? Learning is knowledge, right? And that's ultimately power, and that's what you need, right? Is to learn everything you possibly can about a subject, right? And then put it into practical applications and proof testing, and then sitting on the range and thinking through drills, exercises, curriculum development. But I know we'll get into that stuff in a bit. So.
I wonder too, and this is, kind of a question towards you. Do instructors kind of play a role in creating, in not creating parrots Like when instructors are teaching, at least the ones that I've gotten to spend time with, when they teach something, they don't just say, this is mandatory, or this is the way that it is. 9 times out of 10, they're, at least in the classes I've been in, they're explaining why that is, so that, at least for me as a student, I can internalize that a lot more thoroughly if I understand the why behind that very thing is being taught.
That's a good question. The real part of like the whys didn't really start showing up till a couple of years back for a lot of people. They started listening to others, right? And when we've all taken classes with a lot of each other, like each other inside our peer groups over the years, or we've helped them along, or we taught one instructor, 5 years before they showed up on the scene and became a superhero this week, right? So we've all done this. We've all been through this stuff. But again, like the whys didn't really start to show up for, probably honestly till about 2010. And that was a very small group of individuals that were really focused on whys, right? And then mechanics and all these other little things. The whys are the most important part of the whole operation. Otherwise, and if you can't explain the whys, and if you don't have a variation of that why, right? Some person doesn't have the physical strength that I have, you have, Evan has, or so-and-so has. So their ability to control recoil or manage this or do something else may not necessarily be the right why for them, right? So this is why we hold the gun this way. Well, that's cool if you're 6'5", 300 pounds, and you carry a Glock 34 with all the bells and whistles on it. And then you're trying to put the whys into motion with a person who's carrying a Glock 43. Who's 110-pound, male, female, don't care. I don't really care either way, with smaller hands, different hand strengths. While all these things work the same on us as human beings, they're different in strengths, dexterities, their ability to work in certain directions. So those whys may not equal out to X, Y, or Z group. And that's a problem for a lot of instructors. And then they have to kind of, well, okay, you just need to do this better, right? Or you need to go to this thing called a gym or what have you, right? I mean, we have those jokes, right? But ultimately it's like, look, you need to see a way and physically touch everything to understand that and have seen enough of those students to see what will work for them. What works for Paul Sharp is not going to work for, whoever, so all these things matter. And that's, again, part of the whys, but there is no absolute in the whys either, right? There's only baseline fundamentals of whys that go, especially when techniques are involved, right? Information, most of those whys are pretty solid. But without the context of the whys for X group versus Y group versus Z group, it's not always the same. And there's a lot of that floats around the internet that just makes a lot of us shake our heads.
So we discussed very briefly, there are a ton of instructors out there. A lot of people are teaching all kinds of different topics. What do you consider your specialty to be, and how do you differ from other instructors?
Ooh. That's a great question.
I can answer that for you if you need.
I think you probably could. I don't necessarily like to have one particular specialty, right? I like to keep my hands involved in, all the primary traits, shotguns, pistols, carbines. Shotgun was one of the things that I was very notoriously known for, because I was outside of like Rob Haught, Gunsight, Louis, and me, that was really it for shotgun in the world. Then other guys kind of caught on. Or Daryl, right? Daryl as well, a phenomenal guy. But a lot of people didn't know Daryl, right? Daryl is just that big, happy hermit of life that I love about my little miniature soul brother guy that I love Daryl to death. But a lot of dudes weren't that person. And I was that guy with shotgun besides Rob and Louis. And then obviously with Louis passing, it was kind of Rob, and Rob was kind of taking a step back for a little bit, it seemed like, or it was very limited scope of how many classes he was teaching. But I don't like to say I have one particular specialty, right? I like to be proficient in my abilities to teach a couple of different tasks to people, right? So, pistol, carbine, shotgun stuff, low light, keeping well-rounded and all that is important. I think what it really was for me too is what kind of separates is the way I break things down, right? And that's based on the students, a lot of it too, and their needs. There's too many people that overcomplicate the process to sound smarter than somebody else. And it's all garbage. And I will factually put that out right now, 100%. I'll put everything I do on the line with that. It's ridiculous. It's overrated. It's for likes and grams and shakes and whatever other little things are out on the internet right now. You have a limited scope of time to impart as much information, knowledge to those students. And you have to do it in a way and in a format that they get it. It relates immediately. It's something that they can pick up on now without flooding them. And being able to deliver the most, I say it, bang for their buck, literally at that point, with the least amount of fluff. And it is, somebody just put something up from a recent event about, the way somebody taught a course, and like the simplification and the breakdown of shooting a gun was the easiest thing they'd ever heard. And then they applied it and it was just that, right? We overcomplicate so many tasks because it can't be that, right? It can't be this easy. Oh, it is this easy, right? I've proven it a million times over. It's very easy. And people are like, no way, it can't be. Well, it is. It's the easiest thing in the world to do if you just apply 3 to 4 fundamentals. And if you just do those things consistently, you win. Or you'll be successful, however you choose to phrase it. But overcomplication of tasks is not it. So I think it's pretty much for my simplification of tasks and the process, being pretty well-rounded across the board in multiple disciplines. It's a good thing. There's a lot of instructors out there that are phenomenal at it. I think some are still in that realm of, it has to be this way, right? Because this is the way I was taught, or this is the way I learned, or I'm the bigger brain in the world, which is great. Hey, you do you, and that's awesome. I'm too old to care anymore, ultimately about that, unless I see it hurting people, right, and hurting the students and hurting their information or knowledge transfers. But simplifying it, breaking it down, that's probably what I'm most known for with that.
Yep, that's awesome. I think Tim also touched on that when we were talking to him, where he basically said that there's no reason to overcomplicate anything that you're trying to teach people. I mean, make it as simple as you can, especially for people where it might be their first class, or it might be one of their first times holding a handgun. I mean, they need it broken down into the simplest possible concepts that you can think of. So if you can isolate each component and build off of it, the building block steps, so to speak, of it, it's much easier for them to digest. It's like the old adage of how do you eat an elephant, right? It's one bite at a time. It literally is. You can't approach it at a PhD level with a lot of students and hand them this book and be like, here you go, figure out what all this means. And they go, you just can't do it. And Tim and I have talked about this for years. Tim's been a buddy for a long time. We've shared a lot of information back and forth with each other. And then there's times he'll just call me and he'll be like, did you see that? I'm like, yeah, Tim, I saw that. I read that. I want to forget it all and like put Drano in my eyes. It's okay, but it'll be okay. Tim's still at that place where he's getting it all again now, where we were at 5, 7, 10 years ago with this, right? So it's great to see Tim going through it as well. Tim is probably one of the most underrated or underutilized instructors in this industry. There's about 3 or 4 dudes that I feel that way about after seeing it all for all these years, and Tim is one of them. He's a phenomenal human being, great person, but just overall, he gets it, right? And everybody, regardless of whatever discipline it is they want to shoot for, be it USPSA, IDPA, tactical, defensive, whatever you want to call it this week, just shooting guns, and they would be well served by attending a class with Tim.
So you've addressed this a little bit, but this question is going to focus on it entirely. What qualifications or skills should an instructor possess?
Physical, verbal, mental. I mean, all of them is a real thing with this, right? A good understanding of what they're trying to teach you, right? A good understanding of what they are trying to impart to you. So knowledge, good subject matter knowledge of it, in the understanding of the context of the students they have. Part of that is, what I consider part of the failures of that is people trying to push students to a place that they don't need to be at. Right. We've all seen those courses where it looks like, oh, wow, this is going to be great. I don't know how they're going to do all that in 8 hours, but okay, that's awesome. We've got everything from fundamentals to shooting a pistol to VBSS to, airline hostage rescue takedowns. I'm like, okay, well, that's going to be an awesome class. Where do I sign up for that? And it's 1,800 rounds in the first half of the day. They should have, a good understanding. They should have of that information that they're trying to impart, right? Of the skill set as well. They should be able to demo everything, right? They should be able to demo it all. They should be able to demo it at speed, at half speed, whatever their 100% is, right? But they also have to understand where the breakdown occurs for some students that are visual learners versus auditory versus, whatever. So understanding how everybody learns something, so they should be able to digest that as well and put that out. A good sense of humor, right? Like, again, we talked about that, having a good sense of humor, keeping the course light while safe, a good understanding of range limitations and what they can get away with on a range and what they can't, and with their students. Medical skills. That's one thing I look at heavily. I'm a big med guy. A detailed but not overly detailed medical brief, right, and med plan, and their understanding and use and applications of everything that's in that box that they still have the wrappers on, right, is a big clue to me. If they can't physically show you or tell you how to apply a cat tourniquet, or understand wound packing or other certain things, that I can go, well, okay, cool, but hey, man, this med brief isn't that whatever, but it's just a note in my mental checkbook on things that makes me go, okay, they're not overly concerned about it because they haven't seen it happen, or they haven't had it happen, or they just don't really care about it, right? It's like, well, we'll call an ambulance. I'll tell you what, I've been on some ranges where even though proximity to a major town isn't bad, it's still 30 minutes response time. And seeing accidents on the range, negligence on the range. And I'll tell you, like, my first real experience with this was a course I was teaching a million years ago about that with instructors. And this is a thing. It was for a then well-known program, and they were doing shotgun transitions to pistols. And it was the old Spetsnaz throw it over the shoulder kind of thing, let the gun hang. And a dude's camelback strap caught the trigger guard on his 870, and the gun went off somewhere between him and the instructor. And literally the instructor was like, oh, it's your first ND, hey, congratulations, kind of welcome to the club. You play with guns enough, it's going to happen. So that lacks of safety and that thing, I was like, and if I hadn't physically seen it with my own eyes happening at that time, and then talking to that instructor for that program who I knew, like, hey, man, like med kit stuff, things. He goes, oh, yeah, I got a first aid kit under the front seat of the truck kind of stuff. I was like, oh, man. So learning from those things, but an instructor should be well-rounded in a lot of stuff, right? From an educational standpoint, to their ability to demo, to their ability to break down their demos, to their humor, to medical, to understanding, range setup, layout, and realistically, like, how to divide the class in skill sets and placements on the line, and how to work a line truly of students so everybody gets individualized attention and or breakdowns of what they're doing with the guns. Ultimately, they don't have to be, task force ninja to teach somebody fundamentals of pistol shooting. Right. They don't need that. Right. But I would like to say, like, hey, dude is a USPSA grandmaster, or dude is a whatever. That's great. But this application may not work for this person right now who's not that ability. So a broad spectrum of compartmentalizing the student's needs versus just, again, putting out your bullet point, 12:30, we're doing this, 1:45, we're doing this, 1:50, we're doing this, when you realize most of the class isn't ready to progress to that level. So their ability to read the students as well, and where it is time to cut it, or to keep pushing a little deeper and a little further with those groups. So being well-rounded and all that is important. I mean, obviously, if you're going to do some very specialized skill set class, you're not going to take it from local Bill Bob's Gun and Tackle, right? You're going to seek out somebody that has a greater knowledge base than one person or another in that particular topic or subject. But yeah, ultimately understanding the students' needs more than anything else.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I really like what you said about being able to work the line effectively and distribute time amongst the different students. I've talked to a couple people that just came back from a class, and I said, "How was it?" And they said, "Well, I was pretty solid middle of the pack, so the instructor didn't spend much time with me because he spent all of his time with total beginners or the most advanced people in the class." So that seems like a common theme with some people, where if you're kind of middle of the pack, it's just, yeah, he's fine, I guess. And then you just, you spend all your time on one of the two extremes.
Yes.
I like how you noted that it's also important for the instructor to be able to read their students and kind of know when they're totally checked out, or when they have consumed so much information that they're starting to get to this point where they might not be learning anymore. They might be so potentially exhausted that they might start kind of making mistakes. I think that's obviously a really important thing to have as an instructor, but I would imagine it's not easily learned.
It's not, right. It's a very developed thing through the process of doing it over and over and over and seeing a broad spectrum of students. Student saturation is a very real thing. That's going to be dependent on the way they learn, what's going on in the home front, what's going on in the work front, what is happening with environmental factors. Is it a nighttime class and they're a day dweller who's in bed by 6 o'clock at night, and up by 4 a.m. and on the job? Heat, cold, rain, bugs, all this stuff, sunburn. I mean, we're used to this, right? We're in this environment all the time. So acclimation, saturation, it's all a very real thing. And that is a very big thing for the instructor. Should be able to read, see, and look at, not just push through a program because, well, I'm okay, so they should be okay. And we're tougher than this. Stop it, right? It's ridiculous. It's counterproductive when you could ultimately say, look, we've reached X point today. Hey, we're going to start tomorrow at about 8 a.m. instead of 9 a.m., right? Or, an hour later, we're going to go a little bit longer based on what we have to cover still, or even then their ability to dissect their curriculum and know what to take out and know what to replace is a huge part of that, right? Knowing how to flow and shape a curriculum, but I'm sure we'll talk about that somewhere too. So
that's actually the next question.
Oh, well,
what is your secret to creating your curriculum?
25 years of notes. I could go home right now. I'm on the road as we speak, and I could literally go home, go to the basement, vault, pull a book off of a shelf from 2009. And I could look at that, and I often do. I often go back through those texts of years of notes and little. I mean, there's notes I have that are scribbled on, little post-it notes from the hotel nightstand, to napkins, to backs of USPSA type targets, B8s. I literally have a shelf just full of that stuff. It's kind of like what was the movie with what's his face, and the world's ending and the big thing, and they have the big boats with the arcs and the world is ending, and he's looking for all the maps, right? He's just scaling through stuff at a rapid pace, and that's exactly it, right? So being able to look back through that stuff and go, there was something here then. So, and every year I do this, right? In my downtime, I'll sit back and I'll pull out a lot of the old books just randomly in the old notebooks, and I'll start looking through them, and I'll compare notes with the notes that I took this year. Because after every class, I take notes. I take notes about the students, the range, the weather, myself, their performances, their needs. And ultimately, the curriculum is not what I want to do. I would rather teach them the things they need to be taught rather than the things I want to teach. Right. If that makes sense, which I think it does. And that's the problem. Like, I would rather go do like whatever it is at this point, but I can't do that because this is what they need. Right. And this is why they're here. And this is why they spent their money. And most importantly, their time with me or others, is the need to identify for them often what it truly is that they need to have or what it is they're really looking for, because they may not understand that yet based on their infancy of where they're at in their progression, their training, or where they have trained and gone to, but it hasn't met those needs, but they had a good time. So when I do that, I sit back, I go through all my notes every year. There's a new notebook every year, even if it's full or not, right? That thing just gets... and it's thrown on the shelf because they're cheap. And I don't need, 2021 notebook. I need a 2022 notebook now, even though I'm 75% full on one book. It doesn't matter. There's still pages left, but those pages then become notes for me as I look back on things. So I rehash my notes and I make new notes about my old notes, because it's all important, right? This is the stuff nobody sees. So when I'm developing curriculums, I'm looking at current events. The Q&A sessions with the students, the roundtable AARs with the students during class, after class, before class, technology, right? All these things that are catching up and that people need to be abreast of, right? You need to be ahead of this by 2 years for most people. But that's exactly it, right? So when I look back on things, like red dots, right? Red dots are so awesome. I'm like, cool story, man. My first one was in the 1999 on a pistol, right? So it's nothing new, but the technology is catching up to it. And then I look to, okay, hey, man, 2007, I was doing projects for Trigicon on RMR. And then it was 2010, there was like a video out of something that we talked about technology and red dots on guns, and everybody's like, oh, they'll never be whatever. I'm like, here we are getting the clock's ticking. So, but being able to keep up on current events, right? What is happening in the world, not necessarily just rioting and COVID and all this other bad stuff, whatever it is you're thinking about, but it's the student's perception of their needs, right? And what they want to do with the gun. And when you look at it, 80% of the common student base that shows up to in class, they're average earth dwellers like any of us, right? They just want to be better with the gun. They want to shoot better in a match, or they want to do better at protecting their family or their situational awareness, or they just feel the need to keep progressing and learning something from someone else. And again, with that, there's only so many ways to shoot a chest box, a head box, or transition to another target from left to right, right to left, up, down, 1 meter spacing to 10 meter spacing to 20 meter spacing, right? There's only so many ways to shoot on the move. But understanding what they need versus what they want to learn at that point, right? That's the key ingredient to it. So it's polling the students, it's talking to them, it's reviewing notes, it's going through old curriculums. Like, I have a bag of them sitting here on the table that I can pull out right now that probably go back to 2016, because there may be a key point in there or a drill or an exercise in the last 4 years that I may need. And every year something gets taken away, something gets added, and that curriculum always changes and develops. But ultimately, as it does, it stays the same, right? It's just a different way, again, of putting it together in a fashion that makes sense to the students so that they can comprehend it better, right? So then that involves going to the range and shooting the class. That literally involves me going to the range or getting 1 or 2 of my buddies together and proofing it, or calling another instructor. Like, I may call Tim, run something by him, or Chuck, or Bill, or Cal DeFore, or somebody along those lines, or Mike Pannone, and go, hey, bro, like, am I lost here? Like, am I out of my mind thinking about this flow? Like, no, dude, this sounds logical, right? So, okay, then let's go proof test it, go shoot it, do a somewhat peer review. I mean, Chuck did this with no fail pistol. When he was starting no fail pistol, he was asking us as he was doing it, hey, here's a video of this exercise in the whys. And he'd be like, yeah, cool. We're going to go shoot it and we'll get back to you. So then we go shoot this drill and we call them back like, hey, dude, like this is what I'm seeing. Yeah, okay, cool, same stuff. So we were on the same pages with these things, but peer review of it as well and process, right? I think those are the most important things for instructors. Instead of giving them an experience based on their previous life or their history or whatever it is, we see a lot of guys teaching, let's just call it like transition drills, carbine to pistol. Why? Like, how does that fit your day-to-day role? When are you going to have both of those things on? I get it. There's a skill set involved in that. It's nothing new. This came from Mid-South before it was Mid-South, and it was Shaw's Range. And then it was taken from the Shaw's Range of Mid-South to Blackwater, and from Blackwater to Jason Fallon, from Jason Fallon to the rest of the internet world. And now it's an awesome drill. Stupid. But I get what it is, right? Like, I understand the premise of it and behind it because I was taught it 20 years ago. But you go, that's cool, but does the 29-year-old, 30-year-old, whatever, housewife who just comes into a class, who has a carbine at home, who carries a pistol on her person, who, takes care of the 2 kids, runs a household, works 9 to whatever it is, do they really need to figure that out in their house? No, but where are their skill set at that point? Is it something they want to go do because it's in the class? Because that seems like something kind of cool I'd like to go do just to break up the monotony. Then yeah, absolutely right. Go do something different. Go break some things up. But there are certain tactics or techniques and applications that are not applicable to a lot of people in their day-to-day life and what they do with their guns. I don't know when you're going to be wearing both of those and a plate carrier. I like to wear plate carriers. I don't like to wear them anymore because they're heavy and I know how they work and I have them and I use them for specific things and I get all that stuff. And I used to teach that drill, right? And that's something I'm sure we'll talk about, like, why did you do this kind of thing? But it's ultimately identifying the student's wants, right? And their needs, and then separating those two things and then bringing them together in the middle ground in that process. If that makes sense. I don't know. I'm just rambling tonight because I'm tired and I drove 21 hours, so it's okay.
No, I appreciate what you are saying about separating the needs from the wants. I mean, there was a point even with me for my shooting where, I got the plate carrier and, well, I still have a rifle, but the point that I'm at now is just, I devote almost all of my time to handgun because that's what I'm most likely going to be using for most things. And right. I might go take a rifle class every now and then just to break up the monotony, but it's still not really what I focus on most of the time. And I know it's really, for the most part, not what I need.
So here's a question for that, for either one of you. Do either one of you deer hunt?
I don't. Every year I tell myself I'm going to, and then I don't have the time to do it.
So I often use this example with people, especially guys that hunt a lot, people that hunt a lot, even in my own circles. They don't go out and practice with their hunting rifle, right? But every year they pick it up, they load it, they go zero it, they go out in the woods, they kill a deer. They're successful, right? So there is a degree. Is it luck? Is it success? I don't know at this point, right? Nobody really does. So still being able to be proficient with something, you could come off of a carbine for 3 years and pick it up and 10 minutes of work and you'll be right back to a certain proficiency level with the gun. Because newsflash, there's nothing different between a modern semi-automatic handgun and a carbine, as far as operation and action of loading, unloading, cycle of operation and working of the gun and the controls. There's no difference, right? So if you spend a lot of time with a pistol and then you look at where your slide stop, your slide release is, your bolt catch, your bolt release, your magazine release, like it's just a 9-pound handgun. If you are proficient with one, you can be very well versed and proficient with the other with a very minimal amount of time, so to say, right? Especially going from a pistol to a long gun. But that's just part of it, right? And that's one of those analogies. And the other part is like, you could, I've said this to other instructors, and I roll back to the stupid movie quote, because that's the other thing in the industry. And being an instructor, you have to be good with movie quotes. If you're not good with classic movie quotes, you're done. you will not be able to hang with this group at all. Like, you are just over. And I'm not talking about something that was at the theater 2 months ago. I'm talking like Spaceballs, right? Like, you need to figure out stuff from the 80s movie quotes because they were the best. And that's all there is to it. And you can fight me on this, but I'm telling you, you're going to lose.
I'm Googling, how old is Steve Fisher right now?
51. 51. But it was something that was said in one of the Star Trek movies, right? So here we go, movie quotes. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Spock that said that.
Bingo! Right before he was getting the whole zap thingy, dying, whatever, and his dad. Like the first time I really ever saw like one of those people cry. It was heart wrenching. It almost made me want to like, not really. But that's the key thing, right? So my needs aren't relevant to theirs in what they need to learn and what they need to be taught. So understanding that progression, right? And even though I will learn stuff about myself or something I'm teaching, but that's how the progression comes along for curriculum development and progression of it from year to year, right? And even ultimately, every class is different. You have certain bullet points, you have certain structures. The students often dictate the outcome of the class. And if you're just teaching to the one program constantly, it ain't good.
I thought it was good to have a dramatic pause after that.
Great. We should put
good.
Very dramatic music in there. They're just kind of lost right now. They're like, holy hell, what's going on here right now? We usually have questions. This is bad.
Oh, no. And that was also Wrath of Khan.
Yes, that was it. Wrath of Khan. That was what's his face from Fantasy Island.
Yep.
Playing
Ricardo Montalban.
Who was with the little tattoo guy. Remember they're like,
they're playing
Island. What? They're like, my dad used to watch that. I remember, they're like, what? Yeah. Wrath of Khan.
So the next question. Oh, go ahead.
What was that one Modcast episode where the intro is just this episode of Modcast brought to you by long, awkward silences or something like that?
There was a lot of those classic Modcast long ago that. Whew,
yeah, it was an old one. I know it was an old one for sure.
I blame Matt.
Well, we started in 16, and I think I didn't actually put any structure to it till mid 17 or 18. So
that long ago?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I want all that time back.
Hours upon hours upon hours. So speaking of Modcasts, not really. So how do you generate interest for your courses? And then also what aspects help generate interest?
Ooh. Outside of the world of social media, which is kind of like the general big one, right? Before that, it was forums, right? So there was all these forums on the internet. If it wasn't AR-15, it was pistol.com, it was M4 Carbine, it was all these other weird little exclusives, Light Fighter, all these things that all these guys were in, right? There was a lot of word of mouth for me when I started. Starting out in Michigan, there wasn't a lot, right? It was the local shops, it was things like that. I started to develop programs for the state. So there was a lot of word of mouth when I began. There was also then getting into courses in front of students as a student. Right. And then so, guys were like, hey, you should go see that guy and go do this with him. If it wasn't Pat, it was somebody else. So there was a lot of that, right? There was a lot of information and there was a lot of pushes that were going on at classes, right? Because all the instructors would go to classes, right? We'd all be in classes together. So we'd all start, tossing names around with each other and putting that information out on the internet. At least the credible ones and the good ones were sharing that information, right? Not like some of the other ones out today that are just like, we're the best. You should only take a class with us. Don't go see that person. Social media, a lot of word of mouth. For me, I came in at the right time. Right. And I'll tell people there's a lot of luck involved as well as skill. I fell into things at the right time. I was doing stuff with Pat. I was doing stuff with some other programs. And then I got hired by Magpul. Right. So 2009-10 era, I'm on top of the freaking world, right? Like I could sell cheeseburgers on the street corner to anybody at that point, so I was working there. That certainly didn't hurt. Right. And honestly, I'm glad I listened and took that job instead of not taking it like I wanted to originally and thought about. It set a tone, right? But nowadays it's all social media based, right? It's social media based, it's word of mouth. It's not like the old days again, right? Like, again, it was like Guns and Ammo magazine, and there we are, like, oh my God, 12-page spread of gun sight, or Thunder Ranch in the 90s when it was in Texas, or oh my God, the H&K school, or Smith and Wesson Academy. And people are like, wait, Smith and Wesson had an academy? Yeah, Smith and Wesson taught guns. They taught shooty stuff before SIG. So it's a real thing. And that's how it was, right? We read magazines, and then you heard about it as before the internet, right? Like, oh my God, this is awesome. And you send out that check and the information, or you make a phone call. But now today it's easy, right? It's social media. It's everywhere. And it's who's got the media production, who can put it out fastest, who puts it out first. And the next thing you know, they have all their white knights. No, so-and-so was doing this first. And then you got to go digging back through notes and go, sorry, man. No, sorry about that. They're just doing the same thing we did with a different verbiage. So getting that word out is important. People always go on by, well, this person had a great class, or this class. Everyone has a bad class as an instructor. Everyone has an off class, especially when they're pushing at breakneck rates. They're crisscrossing the country repeatedly. They will have an off class. That should not define that instructor, right? Any of us have had one, or one that we perceive to be bad. And that can go spread across the internet like wildfire. Outside of like flagrant abusive safety issues or other problems, everybody has an off day in their job, no matter what it is. So that shouldn't dictate that. Unfortunately, in social media world, it does, right? You get chastised to the ground that people have never stepped foot on your range. It's awesome. So social media, again, both good and bad. So, groups like primary, secondary, right? Other ones that are out there as well that do this well have a good wealth of information sharing. Right. So all those things are awesome. Just understand not everybody is going to like everyone, right? Somebody may not like me. Somebody doesn't like Chuck. Somebody doesn't like Bill, which we all have those people, and it's great. But you have to seek out more than one source of information on a course. And ultimately, to find that course or that instructor, regardless of who it is, you have to identify your needs and your goals. That's the most important part of it, is the self-reflection of what do I really need and who do I need to seek that out with. Like I tell people right now, hey, if you want to go learn to shoot a pistol XYZ well, right? There's several dudes out there, but at the level you're at right now, I would tell you go take a pistol class with Kyle DeFore. And people are like, well, why? And I'm like, look, I went and took Kyle's pistol class last year and a half ago. And I took it one to shoot with Kyle because, he's a bud, great dude. I just wanted to see what Kyle's program was like. And plus I wanted one of his cool ball caps. So I knew I was going to get one anyway. So, but going into it, I was like, I took away a lot of notes on just presenting information and how to structure specific exercises slightly different. While some were similar that he would do, that I would do, that I've seen others do, it was just his structure of it that made the connection point. So finding an instructor, talking to other instructors about other instructors is important, right? If you've gone and you've taken a class with Bill Blowers, right? You've gone and taken that tap rack class. You've got your cool little kitty cat patch or whatever the hell that thing is that he's got that I like to tease him about. Be like, hey, Bill, who should I take? Whose class should I go to? And Bill will say, hey, man, go see, Nick and the guys from Velix, or go see Mark Smith, or go see Fisher, or go see Chuck, or go see whoever, right? Like they will often give you a recommendation based on having you as a student in the class and where you need to be and what else you need to seek out. I do it daily. I get those questions from guys all the time. I'm like, hey, man, you should go see so-and-so or so-and-so. This person will be a good fit for you. Because we know each other, we know the curriculums, we know the programs, we know their teaching styles, but most importantly, we know the students. And then that's a big one.
Yeah, that's cool. That's something I've never even considered before, is asking one instructor, what other instructors would you recommend if I want to learn this or this, or, if I wanted to improve something more. That's great advice.
Kids these days, I swear. It's like going back to school, like asking your teacher what instructor or other teacher you should have for this next semester of classes that would be a good fit. But no, you're exactly right. Like a lot of people don't think that way, right? They just don't. And, obviously busting your chops about it, but it's factual. Like it's the best thing you can do is often ask your instructor. And most instructors will tell you at the end of class, hey, man, you should go train with these people. So.
Okay, you ready for the best question that we have?
Oh, God, this ought to be good. I can't wait.
What insurance considerations have you had to make?
As far as actual insurance, liability insurance, or just insurance?
Yeah, as an instructor.
Put everything you own in a trust. First and foremost, have a really good attorney. Like no doubt, have a great attorney, have anything that matters to you in a trust if you are ever sued. Have a good insurance program, right? Most insurance companies will underwrite through the same people, right? And most of them will have the same coverages. But it's important to look at that stuff and to see, how much money you should put in. Most ranges will ask for $1 million policy, right? They want to see $1 million in liability coverage. Does that liability insurance cover you for force on force training? Does it cover you for training law enforcement, military, and or security? Because there is variables with those as well. Some insurance programs will not cover you in scenario-based training involving force on force. So a lot of people kind of forget those things, right? They don't necessarily look at that. The other thing is having your curriculum gone through with your insurance agent after it's been approved by, or gone through by lawyers, attorneys, prosecutors, DAs, everybody that you will eventually get called onto the stand if and when one of your students is involved in a shooting. Been there 3 times, right? So it's a good understanding of that to have your curriculum proof tested and gone through in those measures even before submitting it sometimes. So that's just part of that game that a lot of people don't look at, right? And I know Daryl has spoken on this before. I think on a modcast, we had to talk about this a few years back. So making sure your insurance covers everything within the scope of what you are going to teach. And you are not getting in and out of that kind of gray area. There's always a gray area to play. I mean, there is. So that's an important one, right? Well, what else does it cover in medical expenses if a student is injured, right? Or you're injured, or all these little things, right? Like if I'm shot by a student on a range, like what does my insurance cover me for? Right, versus my normal healthcare coverage. What does this look like to my homeowner's insurance if something happens? So all these things, right, that people just don't look at because it only takes one thing and one really good shyster attorney, and you've got a lot of bills going in, right? You have a lot of expenses coming in and out, and you're done. So having those things looked at is important. As well as like the name of your company, right? And involved these things like, Tactical Ninja Gunfighter 5 or whatever it is you're calling your company this week. Cobra Tactical Gunfighting, and you're an NRA instructor who's 23 years old, right? It's like, we might need to rethink that name just a little bit because that's yours for life, right? That is yours for life. Now, having been on my 3rd company right now, I'm like, those things are real, right? Those things are very, very real. What your vehicle coverage is like if you're driving to classes, with all the equipment you're carrying, if that's broken into. So all these other little pieces of the puzzle, right? What is your extra airline insurance coverage like? I mean, there's all kinds of little things to go into that rabbit hole with. But most importantly is, is the curriculum proof tested enough? Has it been gone through? Can it stand up in court? Does your insurance cover all these things? Does that insurance based on your LLC, your DBA, your whatever that you've incorporated articles are, you need to sit down and go through all that stuff, right? And then find a really good tax break state to hide everything in. Oh, wait, that's accounting. Never mind. So because you're not going to make millions at it. I promise you that. So just understanding all those little pieces of the puzzle.
It's my least favorite question. It stresses me out.
Wow. Why are you stressed? There's nothing stressful about it.
Nothing stressful about legal stuff.
No. You know what's stressful? Sitting down with the ATF for 15 days. That's stressful. But everything else, no, it's fine. So don't worry about that, right? Like, you want to be worried about something, be worried about when you're sitting down with the ATF over some paperwork error. That's stressful.
I would sign up for that.
Stressful is burning the Thanksgiving turkey, right? I mean, that's not bad. You can always order pizza. This isn't stressful. This is just business.
That's fair.
I know it's fair.
That's also the first time anybody has gone over the idea that your curriculum should be proof tested by, well, especially your insurance agency, but also some other anybody else that you can that you can convince to look it over. But yeah, I don't think anybody's mentioned that yet.
At some point, everything you put on paper will be called into court.
Yeah.
It's like police work. Ask Matt. He's probably got case files from 10 years ago still that he's waiting for, like, year number 10 so he can get rid of this thing and just get rid of it. You know, surgeons are the same way. You know, they keep that stuff for 10 plus years just in case there is a lawsuit later, right? So holding on to those notes, man, and anything you put on paper that you hold or you store or you have on file, anything can be called in at any time.
What a horrible concept.
I swear I hate attorneys. They're so stressing. Oh, wait, no.
So the next one, what are important things for instructors beyond the curriculum?
Oh, boy, that's another rabbit hole. Good communication with the hosts. Expectations and roles for each and one of you, from range fees to range supplies that are there to what you need to bring with you on site, right? That's one of the first ones. Understand what all the little pieces of the puzzle are. So when you get to class, that you're like, wait, what do you mean there's no target backers and sticks, right? So now we're like, hey, we're deadlining class for an hour. I got to go to Home Depot. I'll be right back. So expectations of the host and you, what is involved in that between the two parties. Sometimes that's paper. Sometimes it's just a phone call, right? Like, hey man, what do you need? I need 12 target stands. I need 4 pieces of steel. I need some sticks and backers. I'll bring staple guns and spray glue and targets, right? That's part of it. Find a good mentor. You know, find somebody to help you understand these things, right? So that's another big one that I could say. Expect nothing to go as planned. Nothing to go as planned, right? Interruptions. The biggest one, like one of the biggest ones ever that I've seen where people fall apart with as instructors, is they have no foul weather plan. What happens when it's pouring rain and everything is awash, right? Cool, there's a classroom. What does your dry fire program look like? Can you fill 2 hours of time with lecture techniques and dry fire work? I had a class a couple of years ago that really made me reevaluate it again. When I got to a range, we had a 1/2-inch ice storm the next day. The weather turned so bad, nobody had clothing for it. They couldn't even get outside to shoot, right? It was a low light handgun class, and nothing was going right. It was just that class. You go, well, this is just completely out of my control because I can't control the weather. And, you know, they're like, oh no, we've got an indoor range. I'm like, oh, this would be awesome. Why didn't you tell me this to begin with? Well, it's only rated for 22 pistols. I'm like, check that. Cool. So go through the notes. whip out the bad weather plan, dry fire applications, dry fire techniques with a gun, handheld flashlight techniques, right? All the things that we could develop dry that we would have spent 3, 4, 5 hours on a range doing. We now compressed it indoors in nice warm weather, right, inside. So having a good foul weather plan instead of just going, well, sorry, we're rained out, that doesn't cut it, and you'll be paying back, whatever the costs and fees are to students. Communication with the host just prior to the class within 48 hours. Are there any changes? Is the range underwater? Are we shifting facilities? I had that this year with a scheduling conflict that a major organization inside our industry screwed up, and I was 24 hours out from class and they canceled the entire class on me because they screwed up the scheduling on their end because of some social media Instagrammer thing that was going on in their facility. And I had to refund $15,000 and they just blew me off about it. Like, oh, sorry about your bad luck. Well, cool, the money's there, not a problem. Here's everybody's money back. But you just ruined a lot of dudes' weeks who took time off work, traveled, hotels, lodging, all the things that are important to everybody else, right? Like, it's my job to do that and to be there. So good communication with the host, a week or 2 out. Even within inside of 48 to 72 hours is important just to make sure everything's good, be it the weather, be it the facility, having a good foul weather plan, travel, allowing yourself time for travel to and from that location, either as a student or the instructor. We just recently had a student coming to an event here that went on over the past week that had their car break down, who paid a lot of money to be there. And because of certain travel stuff that was going on, had to drove in with other kid. And luckily, a bunch of us know the person. So we rallied up vehicles, went, got the person, brought them in, made sure everything was handled with the vehicle, got it dropped off, did whatever needed to be done and got them into the class, right? So they could still enjoy that experience they paid for. And then on the other hand, there's also the part where when I was flying a lot to courses, that I had a course get canceled because of airline snafus and the planes are canceled, flights were canceled between weather issues and mechanical issues, right? Years ago, that ended up costing me a lot of money in refunds and time to students as well. So having all those things pre-planned, like just because you got the money, one doesn't mean you spend the money, right? It's not till the end of the year, people. It doesn't even exist in your account. It's just paper at that point. So understanding the hosting problems, the travel problems, allow plenty of time to get there, even if it's an extra day, because if something goes bad and you and one end, you can be, oh, cool, rent a car, get across country, do what you need to do. So make sure you have plenty of time to relax and set yourself up for success as well as your students. And that's the key thing, honestly, is being in a position to set them up for the best possible experience.
That was rather comprehensive.
Sorry, I get there because that's what I do. And it was funny because, some of the dudes in our group, we all shared this information when they were first coming on, right? Well, that was some of the old modcasts, right? Like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to have this, you need to have these things. I mean, those go back to 2016, 17 when we were talking about these things. And there's several of us that are always willing to reach out and help with this to the up and coming or the guys that are just doing it now. And we're like, hey, man, did you think about this? Like, that thing. Yeah. So that's all very real, man. Those are the other sides of it that people don't get. Evan's like, I never want to leave my home range ever again after hearing that.
No, I this is not the first time that I have been told that I need to be as flexible as possible, and it's probably not going to be the last time either.
Yeah.
So along very similar lines, as an instructor,
the same lines.
What issues have you run into that you have not considered?
So, I've been lucky enough, right? Again, in the mentorship department of where I kind of had a good handle on those things, right? Like I knew what was coming or what could possibly come up. Like the one nobody really could ever prepare for, there was COVID. Right. So that was a weird one for a lot of people in the industry. We had a lot of phone calls, a lot of text messages going back and forth. Hey, what goes on? Well, essentially a lot of us were put on hold for a little bit. Right. I was off the road for like 30 days max. And I was like, I'm done with this. I'm back out on the road. I'm teaching. I don't care. There was a lot of flipping of schedules, right? There was classes that had to be rebooked for the following year. There were refunds. There were credits being given to students. There was, like, how do I address this? So, I was lucky enough to have a really good friend on the government level side of stuff, who I sat down with that February when the world was ending and we were all dying and mutating and turning into zombies. That was like, hey, what is going to be your policy on this? Because this is going to get very real, right? I was like, that's a good idea. So we sat down at a table one day over drinks and dinner and knocked out a return/COVID policy. Like this is what will happen in the event of state, local, federal shutdowns, even before it was a thing. And it's still up somewhere on my website and on my Instagram going back to like 19. It's still there. And, it was comical to watch it being pilfered and put on other people's websites, right? And other people's stuff that they literally ripped the whole thing off verbatim, which was so awesome to see. I was like, you scumbags, I should expect nothing less of you, but it doesn't surprise me, but it surprises me. Then other dudes like, hey, can I steal that? Yeah, man, take it. It's there, right? So, and then it was like, hey, man, you should get this letter from so-and-so saying that you were an essential whatever for work because you're dealing with law enforcement agencies, .govs, blah, 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 blah. Cool. Check that box. Let me get that letter from whatever organization it was to have that fortune. See my papers. These aren't the droids you're looking for kind of stuff. Right. So that was the biggest wrench that I can really see in the past, decade, honestly, was that, and really looking at that. I mean, whether, all these other little issues, those are handled, right? That stuff is easy in the grand scheme of things. But when you're like, man, I'm trying to rearrange classes now that were put on hold for 30 days. So that's like 4 classes, right, for me, 4 to 5 courses. So I'm trying to reschedule ranges. Hey, what is your city? What is your township ordinances? What are they doing about gathering inside, outside, all these things? So tracking all that stuff down when everybody was in the unknown still, right? When we were in that unknown process of navigating these waters. So that involved a lot of legwork, a lot of phone calls, not emails, right? Emails came after the phone calls. Once you hear it in their voice, you get that information, you talk to them about it, you guys come to something. All right, cool. I'm going to blast you over an email about this. And then I'm going to blast out to the students that, hey, man, right now, because of this, and this, we have to do X. And this date will be made up at a later date. And I will give you credit towards, 1 calendar year for the date of the course. And if not, well, cool. Maybe we can work something out, maybe not, but it's just where it's at that point, right? Because everybody's in a pinch and a bind with that. Ultimately through that work and through that information that was set up early enough, that policy, that it really didn't affect me. I lost 1 class that entire year that just could not get rebooked, and everything else flowed pretty well. There's a few refunds here or there, things that were just like, it's easier to do this and just deal with it. But yeah, it was actually really simple to navigate once you sat down, looked at the big picture of things, talked to your host, talked to everybody involved. Like, yeah, this isn't that bad. So, I mean, honestly, in the past decade plus, that's been the biggest thing, right? Outside of personal injuries, you play hurt, right? It's just the game, right? If this is your living and this is what you do, you play hurt. Like Chuck says, nobody cares about your gun problems. Nobody cares about your other problems, right? Nobody cares that your dog died. I was on the road one year when my best cat died. It sucked. It was a great cat. But yeah, it was bad. So nobody cares about those problems. No, nobody does, right? So you have to just kind of go, cool. There are people that depend on what I am doing that have taken their time and their trust in you that you are going to be there. Surgeries, injuries, if you're sick, the roof fell into the house, the dog died, whatever it is, all that's being handled. You still have to go perform. You still have to go work at that point. And that's just the game, right? You play hurt, you play injured, you play sick, you play tired, and those home problems don't matter because you have a job to do. And if your head is not clear, things will happen. Bad things will happen. Somebody will get hurt on that line, and you have to shut that emotional part off of it and just give your best product. So the unknowns, right, such as the COVID deal and everything else that came up with it, and then the knowns of being injured or other things going on in life, you still have a job to do. You still show up. You don't ultimately have the luxury, if you are a full-time, quote unquote, instructor, trainer, whatever it is, to go, oh man, my ankle's twisted. I taught a class for 4 nights, low light, 24 hours after I was off the table from having my arm filleted open, getting carpal tunnel, trigger fingers, tendons released, and my ulnar nerve transplanted. 24 hours later, I was on the range, not even. I made things so it was possible, right? I already knew how to use a left-handed holster. I know how to do certain techniques I couldn't do. I used one of the local SWAT cops from that facility at Alliance to be my gopher to demonstrate certain things that required me the use of 2 arms. Okay, cool. So you have those things in play that make that possible. So you can still deliver the best information and product you can, regardless of how lousy everything else is.
It was honestly really interesting to hear about the injury side of it. Like, that's not something anyone has touched on yet.
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that really crosses people's minds readily because, with a normal 9-to-5 job, you can usually hopefully get some time off for stuff like that.
Yeah. If you have a full-time job and then this job, you can kind of make do with certain things. If this is your job, you don't get that, right? You don't, and you never get that. It's like the mom, right? She's got a newborn at home. She's got this going on. She has this going on. And nobody cares about your 102-degree fever, mom. Get up and make breakfast, do this, take care of the baby, take care of this, make sure this is happening. Or dad, you're doing this, you're doing that. And he's sick and he doesn't feel well, but he's got 2 kids to take care of. Plus all these things matter, right? You don't get that luxury of being down. You just don't do it. You can't just crawl back under the blankets that day, pull them up over your head and go, fine, I'm just going to stay here today. You don't get it. You're not allowed to. And nobody cares about your problems but you. Leave them at home.
Would you say that your level of flexibility really increased over the years? Or, I'm sure your level of quick thinking probably did. Obviously you didn't have all the answers when you started, and you probably still don't. I'm sure you have a lot more now. But, were you always pretty flexible and able to adapt, or did that come to you with time?
Oh, that's time, man. That is a pure time learning thing over the years. There were times that I look back on stuff and go, yeah, no. Your ability to process, to have plans, to have alternate information, all that comes from experience, right? That comes from experience. The ability to be flexible with everything you are doing and how you do it comes from that experience, right? And that's only time. And that's the part of the game that people don't get handed to them, right? They don't get that ability. That is something that is a learned pattern or behavior. Yeah.
What do you see as the biggest challenge you face in most classes?
Students that aren't there to learn is always a hard thing, right? You have the check the box crew, right? They like to show up to class, play grab ass, have a good time. Like we all do at some point. That's awesome. She's just laughing at me. She's like, what do you say? Yeah. But it's true, right? But then you have the other side of that spectrum, right? So balancing those 2 things out and getting it to one cohesive environment for everybody is big. We don't have the gear issues today like we saw in the 90s and the early mid 2000s, be it guns or ammo or Phobos holsters. Matt's nodding his head. Evan's like, what's a Phobos holster? It's okay. You'll see it. All these little equipment, weird things. We really don't have that issue anymore because, again, technology has increased that. The internet has increased the knowledge base. So all those things are out there, right? It's mainly either the individuals in class, which most are pretty good now, right? Like we don't see as much of it as we used to. I think ultimately it's getting everybody on the same page initially out of the gate to make the flow of the class and the learning principles become easier, and the sharing of knowledge between students during the breaks. Those can be problematic to a degree at the beginning because there's always these little cliques at class, right? Like you could almost treat it like the industry as a whole, right? Like, so this section of the group, you have the range master crew, right? Like, no offense, I'm just throwing out, things here. Then you have what others would consider, well, then you've got the tactical guys over here, right? And then you have this group over here, and it's like school, right? It's like elementary, junior high, all over again. You've got cheerleaders, you've got jocks, you've got this, but then putting them all together so they all work together in a team environment to make the class go smoother, more efficiently, and have better learning, not only from the instructor, but from each other. That can be challenging at times based on the groups. But ultimately, nowadays, man, it's pretty easy. The internet is one of those things that has helped that over the years. So that's a great thing from that. But ultimately, there's really not those big of problems anymore. They're just not. Note taking, that's it. Students not taking notes. Students taking notes on their phone and typing annoy the hell out of me. That's the big one. I hate that. Pick up a pen, pick up a notebook, and write your notes out and then refresh them out 5 times over, then type them into your phone. Because when you're in your phone, you're going to lose them in 3 months when you forget about them because it's always in your face and you forget about them because you put them on that stupid electronic coma machine that you have jammed in your face the entire time of class. Take a notebook, write it down. You'll be thanking me years later. Just saying.
So that's really good advice for a student. What's your advice for future instructors?
Don't do it. Don't do it. Honestly, if it's worth it to you and you feel that you can make that large of impact or difference or change, go forth and conquer the world, and more power to you. I would turn around and go back to school and do something else completely different than this job. Regardless of how good or how bad people think you are or how well versed in it you think you are, there's always somebody better, right? And that's just progressive course of nature and life, right? There's always somebody better, faster, stronger, smarter, whatever it is at this. Ultimately, I would tell you, if you're going to do this, right, look at it for what it is. Is it a side job or is it your main hustle, right? Is this is going to be your life, you better start diving into it now, and you better dive into it deep, and you better immerse yourself in every possible facet of it as the up and coming instructor, and you better be the best at it you can, and you better be prepared to face peer review that you may not like to hear or feel, that will hurt your feelings, and that you will lose friends and family over in time if this is your entire existence. And learning how to balance your home life and your relationships and everything else that you may have without becoming an alcoholic or just crashing your truck into a wall at 100 miles an hour one night on the road doing this. Ask me how I know, right? I've been there on all these sides. Every single side that I just mentioned, I have been there in my life, in my career as an instructor, right? It's probably due to people mismanaging time. That's a big one. There's a young kid on the internet who's really good at what he does in his marketing and what his plans are and how he does things. And he had asked me a couple of years back, what should I do? How should I do this? I said, this should not be your full-time job. you have 2 kids, 2 boys, right, that are going to be awesome ages within a year. You're going to miss a lot of stuff. You're going to miss birthdays. You're going to miss all kinds of things in their life and them growing up if you choose to do this at this pace and rate that you're continuing on, because you're loving the success and everybody loving you. And that is real. It is very real. But be prepared to face that peer review. Be prepared to be attacked. Be prepared to be questioned on every single thing you do. Doesn't matter from the pants you wear to the vehicle you drive to what you teach to the whys. You will be chastised. And you better have thick skin about it. And you better make your peace with your family about it before you ever choose to do it. Matt knows that sacrifice. He can tell you right now, this industry, this job is toxic. It will take so much out of your soul. You will hate everyone worse than you ever have in your entire life. And I can factually say that 100%. And there are people that completely fall apart in it. And they dive into it so deep that it consumes them and they lose everything they've ever had and worked for. Been there, done it. It is not a good place to wake up. And there are things in place for that, right? That help each other in reaching out to our friends, but don't let it consume you. Find a good mentor, find a good place, find a good role, find a good balance in your life, in your home front, and everything else that you have. Because one day you'll wake up and it's all gone, every single bit of it. And then you'll be alone. Trust me, it's not a pretty world at times. And the deeper you get into it, the more people want you, the more people will use you, especially if you're successful. And then next month there's somebody better and you're gone. This industry is entirely built upon users. Social media is the worst aspect of that. And the industry itself is at guilt for it. And their marketing companies are at fault for it. They will use you up and get rid of you faster than anybody else when your time is done and you've served your purpose to them over a piece of plastic and metal. And your 200,000 to 1 million likes and viewers. Oh, you'll get your money, you'll get your product, you'll get things. And then you'll just get tossed to the curb. So you have to ask yourself, how deep do I want to go? And how far down that rabbit hole do I want to be in my life with this? It's a great place.
Well, early on, you said you're not going to be making millions. So, yeah, it is something people need to weigh and consider.
Yeah, you know, it's a great way to get experience, to do all these things that you think is great, right? And you start out with this goal, and then you get kind of bitter, right? You get very coarse about things after a while, especially after a bad business deal, or this company you got in bed with on X product turns out to be garbage in 6 months and they're gone. That's happened, right? We've seen that. They come out of the gate on fire and they gobble up all these instructors and they pay you money. And this is awesome. I'm getting checks in the mail just for doing this or wearing item A or pimping product B, or I get 8% kickback on this product through my YouTube channel, Instagram. Are you really that hard up to be associated with that much garbage that you are now staking your reputation on as a human being? All for some dollars. Oh, and believe me, there's a lot of people out there that do it. Scan YouTube and Instagram every other week. They're with a different company, whoring out another product being shills, legitimately. I won't say I made that mistake early on in my life, but there's things that I look back in my career and go, yeah, I probably wouldn't have worked with that company back then. Thank God it was before the internet. But these are the realistic, these are the things nobody wants to talk about, right? When you're on top, you're on top. When you're on the bottom, you're a nobody and everybody leaves you. And nobody is there during the successes being built, but they sure want to be your friend once you've built it. And then when there's somebody else with a better building, nope, gone. Not even a phone call returned.
That young instructor that went and spoke to you, I think I know who you're talking about, and he's kind of gone off the map for the most part.
It happens.
That's probably for his best and for his family.
It absolutely was. It absolutely truly was. And, he still does some stuff here and there. But he's got it right, and he understood it. And we've had those calls off and on. He says, you're right. I saw a lot of things, and I saw a lot of evil in this, and I understood a lot of it after making some money right away. And yeah, I get it now. And it's very possible to make those mistakes.
And he's a bit religious, right? Yeah. Yeah. No, I think he probably made the right decision.
Yeah. But there's a whole dark side to this whole environment that's called the industry. And it's very dark.
All right. Well, guess we'll just cut it now. That's it.
Fine, Evan.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Good night, everybody.
You got to end on a good note, Evan. You can never end on a bad note, Evan. So you have to have a good question or something good on something positive.
It's hilarious because I think we asked this question to Brian last week, and Brian goes, "Oh yeah, just start doing it now. Just dive into it and get it over with." And then we ask you, and you're like, "No,
Never.
Don't even think about it. Don't ever do it."
People that have done this in a very small segment of the community, they have their little niche group that they constantly swirl in that they will never get out of. They will constantly teach in that same little pool and add a little bit of water, take a little bit of water away. When you look at the overall big picture of it as a whole, when you start ending up in this place, instructing, consulting, teaching for other programs besides your own, working with companies, developing their programs so that their individuals can instruct and teach on their products, there's a whole nother back half to this world, right? It's not just about a sponsorship or who's going to give you $50, $60, $100,000 this year for drinking Monster and having 1 million likes. That real money is out there, right? And that's the race for a lot of these people. I can tell you some horror stories, including my own and those about others in the industry I've had to deal with over the years, not just myself, but others. So it's not a pretty place depending on how you navigate the waters and how you choose to live your life in it. That is a fact. But what's the good?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I was gonna mention, yeah, not everyone has the same type of values.
Yeah. That's very real. And what people don't see when they call you a shill or they call you this, they call you all these names, like you don't see what my contracts look like. That's my business. That's this party's business. Guys used to give me grief. Well, about every 3 to 5 years, you're with somebody else, or every 4 years, you're with another carbine company, or you do this. It's because as a consultant, it's about a 3-year lifespan. Once you work on other projects and things that have come to fruition, you're done. That's what the signed document says, right? So it's not a big deal. So you always have to be ahead of that curve. And that's where people don't see, right? But what people also don't see is the companies you've been with for 10, 15 years that have always been your mainstay, that you've been with for a long time, and what you do for them, or the products you've had your hand in their development, the process of, and you can sit back and go, I did that. And then that's the great part of it, right? So there is a plus side to it. So if you want to be useful, not as an instructor, get a degree in engineering. So not only can you talk about it and use the product, but you can also understand why it doesn't work or why it should work that way. It all depends on the applications and how deep you want to get into it. Get a degree in something that will benefit you over the long term, because in 20 years, 30 years, whatever it may be, that may not be the place for you is back on the road. You may need that real job, that real lifestyle, that real home front. So it's all a happy balance, man. It's not all dark doom and gloom. Yeah, a lot of it is. But the other good half of it is that portion where you go, you make a lot of great connections. You get some true friends out of it. You also get a career out of it eventually, where you go from an instructor to, next thing you know, you're working at some company because you decided to also go to school and get a degree in marketing, engineering, whatever. Now you have knowledge of both sides of the coin. That's the important part of it, right? That's the side nobody else wants to see or talk about.
Yeah, it seems to be directly proportional to what you put into it.
Bingo.
And the more you put into it, the more benefits, but at the same time, you also have the negativity and all the less desirable aspects that will come.
Oh, it will. I think we had this talk in 2016. So, yeah. I'm waiting. There's got to be something else.
Oh, yeah. So it's funny because you even said this, and the question goes something like this. If you could go back and do it all over again, what would you do differently?
Ooh. I would tell the people that I originally taught a million years ago, I'm sorry. I would look at what was being taught then, because that's what we knew. And I would understand it wasn't necessarily wrong, but it wasn't really necessarily correct based on what we've learned in years of doing this now. I would like to take them and bring them back into another place 20 years before and teach them the things that I know now, or explain them differently, or give them that information. I would change a lot of other little details in personal life to professional life. There would be people I would not have mentored ever. Ones that I had that literally just turned tails on you. There are a lot of, I won't say a lot of companies, a few companies I wouldn't have worked with. So there's always that hindsight, right? But I think the biggest thing is I would go back. I would change the way I taught based on what I have now learned and what I now know. I think there was a disservice done to people for years in that market, but again, it's all we knew. So you can't really say that, wholeheartedly 100% fact, right? Because it's all we knew. Some things worked. Some things are just better now. But I think if I was to do it, the things I wouldn't do is I wouldn't teach at the pace that I do now, because it's like expected, right? Like it's there. It's what is kind of your thing now at this point, right? And I think I probably would have helped others more so than I did. And I try to do that now, right? Like without expectations, without, hey, you owe me one kind of deal, without the fanfare of it, the acknowledgement openly, any of that kind of stuff. It's just good knowing the good that you've done in the background, right? So I would probably go back. The things I wouldn't do were minimal, right? That I wouldn't do again. But the things that I should have done, I would do differently.
I'm wondering if Tessah has something to say.
As the wheels are turning, you can just see her. And if not, mail.
I'm taking notes because something like a theme that I'm noticing just throughout these is that, genuine people are going to recommend this. And essentially that is to be a genuine person. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the things that are like, I would go back and do this differently are not necessarily related to being a genuine person, but are just related to being more like the person that they strive to be. And so what I'm writing down was just to feel confident about the choices and the things that we're doing completely off record and completely out of the public eye. Be a genuine person, essentially.
Yeah. Try to be the best human you can. And we're all humans, right? We're all going to make a mistake. We're all going to do something terrible in our lives at some point, and that's just it, right? It's going to be there. But ultimately be the best person you can about it, deliver the best product you can, and just be the person to help other human beings genuinely and not worry about anything coming back to you on it, right? Just go and do it for the right reasons. Never expect anything in return, because it's not what matters, right? What matters is what you do to help somebody else along.
The right reasons, like highlight, circle, exclamation mark.
That's like my English teacher in school, right? Like, this is terrible paperwork. Yeah, I know. But no, you're 100% right. You're absolutely right.
Okay, this next question I really like. What's one thing that you've changed your mind about in the last 5 years?
Ooh.
The last 5 years, Steve, not the last 25.
Watch yourself, young, and watch it. The last 5 years. It's okay to be wrong, honestly, and or not knowing, but don't be afraid to really embrace another discipline, right? Because for years and still this great divide between like competitive sports and tactics, defensive shooting, whatever this stupidity anymore is called. Don't be afraid to embrace that and learn about it and shoot it and understand where it all crosses over in the grand scheme of things. I think going back 15 years ago, I mean, I shot 2-gun, 3-gun, dabbled in a few other things. It was great. But don't discount it and push it to the side like some of these people do currently on the interwebs. There's been some great debates about that lately, and I just laugh. And I have to call Tim and talk him off the ledge because I know some of those people that were involved in those discussions, and I get where they come from. But don't be afraid to embrace something or endorse it because it's just shooting. Don't discount something just because a technique doesn't fit your particular world. Right. We saw this recently with Rhett and his little stock brace cheek weld goofy silliness that's dumb as a box that I can't stand. But again, right, I'm kidding. It doesn't fit my profile, my livelihood, my guns, or my way of doing things. Do I see merit in it based on what he was using? Sure, I do. Doesn't mean it's dumb. It just means it only works in a limited scope application for certain things. That is what he does, or what a few others may do with that type of setup. Doesn't mean it's wrong, just means it's different. And different isn't necessarily bad. So embrace other ideas and concepts and take them in and absorb it and look at it and diagnose it. And if it's not you, don't worry about it. You don't need to comment.
Yeah, I see his stuff and I am intrigued and I want to try it myself just to see how it functions.
Yeah, I had a great talk with Craig about it. And I go, I get where the thinking is behind it from certain issues, right? That will be coming by Q2 of this year, guaranteed, or of 2022, I should say. It's not different than what we did with them years ago when all we had were cane tips on the end of buffer tubes. Nothing new again, right? Again, what's old is new, and somebody's just discovered it because of whatever, and they're not in that circle to have seen it 10 years ago. Again, doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different. Don't hate it. It's not the best. Does it have a place? Yeah, probably does. I'm sure it does. Explore it. Don't be afraid of it. Move on. It doesn't concern you, and it's not paying your bills. It's not laying down with you in your bed at night. It doesn't matter.
Next question. How would you recommend people vet their instructors?
Through other instructors. Peer review is one of the hardest things. And if your peers accept it and you've worked with them and you've done things together, or they know you and they know your product, or they've seen your students and the outcome of your product, the easiest way to do it. And I think probably the best is to vet through your instructors or again, do the research, find, there should be a Yelp system for the industry, honestly, for instructors, right? There should be like this Yelp review database that like confirmed Yelp reviewers, right? Not like the fake ones on Amazon and stuff. But you kind of get where I'm at, right? So understanding that somebody's like, hey, I've taken 5 classes with this person. That's probably a good indicator, right? Just because somebody has taught XYZ, ABC agency, or done this or done that, that doesn't mean a whole hill of beans, because all those agencies bring everybody in. They're just there to steal your ideas and implement them in their program, and it's not stealing if they purchased it, right? So that's not a litmus test. That's nothing. That's a Holiday Inn, because everybody stays there. Not a big deal. But what you need to look at it as, what do others say that have taken the classes repeatedly, or repeated visits with you, or brought people to that program, and or what do the peers in that person's industry or that group or that space say about them? because not one instructor holds the keys to any of this. Not a one. So you have to ask them and do the big peer reviews.
Yeah, Matt, how often do I message you asking you, have you heard of this person before? What do you think of this person? It's like, I'm starting to think it's like a daily occurrence at this point.
It happens, right? And that's it.
Yeah.
It's asking somebody, hey, what's the best gun? 2011, 9mm, 45 single stack, AK, AR. I don't care. It's just a gun. But
What's
understand
the best gun? Yes.
exactly all of them. So again, the peer review is the big one. More dramatic music for the long pause. Done.
Matt, do you want me to ask the question? Do you want me to just go for that?
Oh no, my computer just froze up for some reason.
Oh.
I wish you would. You've been sitting there quietly. Say something good.
She's taking notes for us all. We all get a copy.
Notes. We're waiting.
Is there anything that you feel is pertinent that we neglected to cover?
I'm going to reserve that one for another time and place. No, I think pretty much we've covered, I mean, most all of the stuff. I'm sure I rambled off topic on a couple of things, but no, I think we covered pretty much most everything that a lot of people should learn and hear about in that place of wanting to be an instructor in the industry. And we've always heard this, stay in your lane. What is that lane today? Years ago, we told dudes, hey man, get back on the shoulder, put the hazards on. That's where you belong. That's fact. Like some people still need to stay there. That's truth be told. But like now that lane is 8-lane freeway going north and south, right? Like it's all there. Like anybody can get on it and go. Nothing wrong with that at all. Like everybody, the people that are there who have a product will survive it. The next year, it's going to get rougher. This isn't an easy time to be an instructor. It's not. Ammo, everything else that's going on doesn't make it very conducive to really doing this right now. And even though it should happen, right? Like you should at least attempt it and you should try it. You absolutely should. We tell you things, we say these stuff based on our experiences, but no, people should try. They should get in that lane and they should travel it and they should see how they end up and how they stack up against everything else that they are trying to do. And are they trying to just do what everybody else is already doing? There's only a handful of dudes right now that I look to or that I talk about and people that I actually look at and see and watch what they're doing. And they're doing it well, right? But again, if you're going to do it, get in your lane, drive your car in that lane until you can get into another lane and then another and then another. And do it well. And own it. Own everything you do with it. So, covering that, the entire spectrum of it, right? I think we did that, but it's the, what is that lane for people? And no, it won't get you killed in the streets.
Actually, before that question, the panel, do you guys have any alibi questions?
Well, I think that Steve cheated and looked ahead on the questions. That's what I just realized.
No, I did not.
It's a good idea for the person being interviewed to have an idea of what's coming up so they can have some answers formulated.
I only looked at the first one and the last one. Everything else I did not. That sets the tone, the first question and the last question.
But yes, your stuff isn't going to get anyone killed on the streets. The actual last question is, where and how can people find you? In person in classes and online?
On the web, obviously it's sentinelconcepts.com. Sentinel Concepts on Instagram. It's like, I think Sentinel_concepts is like kind of abbreviated. It doesn't matter because Instagram shadow bans the hell out of everybody anyways anymore. So it makes it tougher. There's stuff over on PNS. There's stuff all over the internet about this. Mainly through the website, sentinelconcepts.com, on Facebook, Sentinel Concepts, on Instagram, same thing. And there's links and there's stuff there's all over the internet. A lot of us share each other's companies with, links to other instructors and those kind of deals. So we're out there. It's just, you got to seek it out. You've got to look for it. The other thing to look at for a lot of people that I was going to bring up on this, as well as for the instructors, to maximize your exposure time, and I was thinking about this somewhere in the middle of all this mess, you should participate in these big events, these summits, these symposiums, all these things that get put on, right? Like if you're an instructor and you get invited to one of these, get the face time in front of the unknown. Get out there, go to the, whatever U.S. concealed carry one, go to NRA, go to whatever these shows are that you can get into, and, put yourself out there. Put your products out in front of the students, get out to the PNS Summit, the Shooter Symposium, the USCCA, the whoever, whatever is doing all these things, right? Because everybody has some form of them all around the country all year. Go to them. If you're asked to teach, go. If you're asked to teach at like Ohio Tactical Officers Association or TTPOA or all these big events, right, go. Especially young and upcoming instructors, right? And then you can kind of ascertain, is it worth it? A lot of them, there's no ROI, depending on who you are and what you do for that program. It's a very real thing. So you may get residual. You may get one student. You may get none. But you need to get out there and you need to do it, and you need to put yourself out there on that street. Stop yawning. It's not that late.
I'm an old lady.
I'm calling John and Sarah. I'm getting you fired.
Oh, great.
Text him right now.
Well, I think that was a very insightful discussion. And I think we got some aspects that we probably won't hear very much about in future interviews as well.
Steve, I do have one question for you. What specifically, well, actually I have two. What specifically is your favorite part about instructing? Because obviously there's some pretty big negatives, right? But there is at least one reason that you keep doing it. So what is it?
Certainly not the money.
He's so invested already.
I'm so invested. I mean, like you could answer that with one of those answers of like, because I don't know what else to do anymore, right? Like this is all I have done. This is all I have done for X number of years besides consult and do some other projects on the side throughout the industry. Ultimately, it's the students, right? That there is knowledge that needs to be imparted that was imparted to me years ago from other people that we stood on their shoulders of their greatness and them as giants before us. And that lineage, that history cannot die. It's not about me. It's about the product that is learned and developed from them and us that needs to be pushed down and passed over and given to them, and to give them the same light bulb moments we got 25 years earlier. It's not about me. It's not about Chuck. It's not about Bill. It's not about Scott. It's not about Tim. It's not about Brian. It's not about any of us. We are just a kind of a ship getting this information delivered to people. It's ultimately about the students and that information that we give them to continue on that path that we started on 20, 30 years ago. That's what it's about. And my favorite thing is that moment when it clicks and that student will look over at you and just give you that smile or that head nod or walk by, fist bump, whatever it is, and be like, yeah, I got it. Like all of a sudden, it's like, here it is. You hit something that resonated with them and it's exciting and you see it in their face and it gets you going. And it's like a kid at Christmas opening up their favorite damn toy. That's what it is, right? That's what it boils down to. That's why we're here. And if it saves one person, I mean, I have a list like a lot of guys do of the emails and the awards and plaques and stuff that departments have given us or officers have, or a patch, or they ask us to sign a picture of something or their vest or something weird, which a lot of us have had because something we taught them, not as either as an individual or as a whole or as a combo of instructors, that has paid off and has made that job for them, that has done that thing that they needed to do, that made them successful, that saved somebody else or prevented something even worse from happening, right? Like I have those, and they're on a wall, right? They're sitting there, they're in the phone, all these things that sit there, and every once in a while, when it gets that bad, you look at that and go, that made a difference. And it wasn't just me, but it was the combination of things we all taught this person, because they seeked it out because we were there. And we were there to give it to them. That's what matters. That's why we do it.
That's awesome. And the other question I have is, do you feel like you prefer teaching newer shooters or experienced shooters, and has that changed over time? So, when you first started teaching, were you mostly looking for newer shooters or advanced shooters, and is it the same now?
Yeah, I treat it the same. There's no such thing as an advanced shooter, right, or an advanced shooting problem or solutions. I mean, there's things, right, that build that. But I prefer to work with all the skill sets, right, because everybody can show improvement no matter what level they're at. Right. And that do not want to take in information and just want to do the one trick pony stuff that they are good at, or people I don't want to reach or teach, because they're just that person who's there in class to show off. You can't push somebody who has reached such a level, but you may be able to reach them with one little nugget of something that may happen. But ultimately, it's about the whole of the other 20 people in that class or the other 10 people in that class, because everybody is capable of taking away something to make them better.
Totally agree. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, Steve, thanks for joining us. That was a great discussion.
Thank you. It's always a good time. I try to get in when I can with you guys. Obviously, it's been breakneck. The past few months, man. I'm just glad to be here, and I'm glad you're doing this. This one is one of those ones that will really, sit in the archives and get played over again and again for a while. And it should, even by the instructors and or a lot of potential students, should really listen to this one a lot more.
Well, you said you wanted to end on a positive note.
There you go. That's pretty positive.
Thanks. That was so awesome. I'm glad you're so chipper tonight and so positive about things. No, it was solid. I enjoyed it. It was a great time talking with you guys. And then honestly, I've told Matt, I've told other people, if you guys need anything, please reach out. My contact's there. It's just get a hold of me. If you have questions, if there's things, please reach out. That's what we do. So be more than happy to help you. And I'm still calling John and Sarah and telling them to fire you. So.
Well, they'll tell you to go away because they like me. Did you notice how timidly I said that?
That was not very confident at all.
Yeah, she was like, they like me.
No.
They like me.
She's trying to convince herself as she's saying it. She's like, yeah, they like me. Yeah.
But John and Sarah are some great people in the industry. I've been happy to have them as friends for quite some time, and I'm very happy for their success. I really am.